And then okay, we are recording. Hello and welcome to yet another session on best practices with student engagement. Today we have Sarah Rivera. She will introduce herself, and she just shared some slides with us, which we'll have up on our resource site as well. We have a couple of folks from Streetsboro, and I know it's the end of the day. So, and Dan, Sarah, it's not you, it's Dan having done 2 remote sessions already. So today, Wednesdays are sort of jam-packed for us, which is good. So we're excited by that. But we're here to learn from Sarah. So Sarah, take it away. And then for Sherry and Sandy, if you have questions, either throw them in the chat or just like raise your hand and say, I want to know. And then I'll call it out. I'll try to moderate a little bit, but put them in the chat. We also have the Q&A open. So if you click up there on the, what is that? We got to come up with a name for that triangle, square, circle thing, because it's not a snowman. It's not a hamburger. I don't know what that is. We have to figure it out.
Upside down waffle cone.
Upside what? Oh, yes. We'll call it whatever we want. So either way, so
yeah, I was thinking more of a gnome. Like it kind of looks like a gnome a little bit.
Oh yeah, okay. A gnome with a monocle, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Just throw it in there, or just put your hand
up. Fine.
At the bottom, Sherry and Sandy, like there's that raise hand. So just do that one, and then we'll know that you have a question, because we want it to be kind of informal, and we want to just learn everything we possibly can from Sarah. So Dan and I will play co-moderators and extract the things that she doesn't volunteer for herself. So Sarah, take it away. We're so excited.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Let me grab my screen real quick. My thing is there we go. Tab. All right. Did that link came through okay, right? That the link to my slides. Okay, perfect. So yeah, so you have a copy of this. So take whatever you need. Is it, hold on, let me load. Okay, can you see it okay? I'm making sure because my internet's a little slow on my end. We got multiple devices going right now. We okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, just checking. Okay, so like Andrea said, I'm Sarah Rivera. I'm one of the science teachers at Mayfield High School, and we have been bouncing back and forth between online and remote learning, and then doing it at the same time. So Andrea had asked me if I wanted to come in and talk a little bit about how I manage my science classroom, doing both at the same time with kids that are constantly changing their mind back and forth from online to in person and back again and things like that. That's been the last 2 days. That's pretty much what's been happening in my life. I'm like, I have these kids showing up in my class, and I'm like, I've never seen you except for on Zoom. And they're here in person. So anyways, all right. So just to give you kind of a background, right now I'm teaching physical science, and I teach also an engineering class. So I have four sections of physical science, and then I have 1 section of engineering class. Again, I have kids that are remote and kids that are in person, in both at the same time. We were remote to start with. We came back for about 3 weeks for both the in-person and remote, and then we went back to remote until yesterday. And yesterday we're back because our numbers are down according to our COVID dashboard. And we're like, let's go. We're coming back. Okay, great. All right, so to kind of give you an idea of my class sizes as well, I have freshmen are in my physical science class. I have a couple sophomores. Some of my classes have literally only 2 kids that are remote. And again, remote for us, it's not a third-party program. They are on Zoom with us while we are teaching our in-person learners. My engineering class is a little bit different. I have about half and half. Half are online on Zoom and half are in person. And with teaching engineering, that has become a little bit of a quandary because it's such a project-based class. So it's been a pain point for me on how to teach those online kids some of those engineering skills and get them that hands-on learning with them not actually being there, and also being equitable in terms of supplies and things like that. The other thing is that we are on block schedules. So I have 90-minute classes, and then we alternate days. So for example, we call them green and white days. A typical week could be Monday, Wednesday, Friday are green days, and then Tuesday, Thursday are white days. Hold on 1 second.
feel like there's a wild animal in there.
There is a hound in the house, and he likes to sing the song of his people. All right. So anyways, yeah. So then it kind of alternates. So I don't see my green class every day. I see them every other day, but then I get 90 minutes with them. So that's kind of another pain point when you're doing online learning is if you have 90 minutes, these kids are Zooming all day long. They've got 4 or 5 90-minute classes, and like they're fatigued by the end of the day. So it's been interesting trying to adjust things to make sure that it gives them enough time away from the screen so they're not getting headaches or things like that. Okay, so how I've been able to manage both. It's a work in progress, honestly. With kids who are remote coming back into the classroom, I think one of my biggest pieces of advice is like, don't change up your routine. If you've been doing certain things with them online and then they're coming back, keep doing what you're doing because they rely on that routine. This week, my kids called me out because, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, one of my routines is at the beginning of class, I usually ask them how they are, or I'll put up like a this or that question and we'll start some discussion on it, or like a funny meme, like rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 9 SpongeBob meme picture. And I didn't do that yesterday. When my kids came back in person, they're like, what are we, we're not doing that? Like, what? And it was really funny to see that. So they thrive on that routine and the consistency, no matter what format that they're in. So when I start a class, I usually have my Zoom up and I have an agenda. And in the slide, there's a link to an agenda. This is an old one that I gave you all. Feel free to copy, steal, and share. This is typically what I put up on my screen, both in my classroom via my projector, and then also on Zoom because we were using Zoom. So I share the screen, they have this up, and then I usually have music playing in the background as well. I use music pretty much every day in my class. I just kind of go on and pick some random songs, whether it's 80s music day or 90s music day or whatever. So my kids that come in on Zoom, this is the first thing they see when they log on, and I let them in after they're in the waiting room. So that way they know, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what they're going to need for the day. This is our complete agenda. And it's the same agenda for in person. Because again, I'm teaching the same exact stuff to kids, just 2 different ways, really. So yeah, anyways, I pulled this. I can't remember who I stole this from, but I've been using it for 2 years now as kind of a nice agenda. And, if admin walks in and they're like, where are your I can statements or where are your objectives? It's right on the slide. It's great. It's dual purpose.
And we're not seeing your slides, Sarah. So if you,
you're not.
So share them again. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Why did it unpresent? Snap. Okay, hold on. There we go.
Referencing something, and I can't see it.
Oh yeah, sorry. Here, can you see it now?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. It's in my original presentation. There's a link to it as well, and these were all my ones from last year, and I kind of, again, dual purpose. I use this as almost my lesson planning template as well, and I put them in reverse chronological order. So this is the whole entire year last year. From the very first day till now, or till May, when we got out to do that agenda for the kids. So it's got the whole kit and caboodle in terms of putting stuff up. But yeah, I mean, this is a good way. Like if you're letting kids in online and you're trying to manage the flow from kids physically coming in your room, talking to you, asking for help, it's a good way to start and at least kind of almost pause those kids online before you're ready to start. Okay, let me go.
Sarah, is that something you share out in Google Classroom too? Like, do they have access to that agenda?
We are Team Schoology. So yeah, and that was another thing I had to switch from. I've been using Classroom now for like, I don't know, since it was created, and now we're Schoology. So I'm like, all right, great. It is in Schoology. So that way, I also posted in Schoology. So that way, the kids who are absent can go in and look at that agenda as well and say like, oh, I missed this that day. So another dual purpose. If it was in Classroom, I'd probably put it under materials. And then, again, that would be a nice, starting point for missed work or referring back to it, things like that.
And for those of you watching later or here, Schoology is another learning management system. It's a little bit more complex than Google Classroom. It's also a premium product, so it doesn't come to a school district for free. So it's quite expensive. It's sort of like Blackboard, but a little bit geared for K-12.
Yeah, it was definitely a switch going from classroom to Schoology. It's got many more bells and whistles. It's got a secure testing system that's built into it. It's got a conferencing system, and that's probably why it costs tens of thousands of dollars more than Classroom. So
Well, I think we're doing just fine with Google Classroom. I think it's
yeah,
almost every week now. Dan and I were just saying, like, it's almost every week or every day that there's another update. So, all right, keep going. I don't want to.
yes. Okay,
Love
okay,
it.
no worries. Let me go back to my tab. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. All right. So there we go. All right. So when I start class again, I have because I have 90-minute blocks, I have a little bit more leeway time. And I don't know what kind of schedule you all are on. I know some people do 45, some people have somewhere between 45 and 90. But I always wait a little bit for my online kids to come in. I give them about 2 or 3 minutes after the bell has rung to get into the online learning environment. And really, it's because people's computers connect slowly. There's questions sometimes that they have when they pop in. All sorts of other technical difficulties, or people again just not getting in on time because they're connecting and they think they're going to be in on time and then something glitches. So I try to give them a little bit of leeway time, and then if they're coming in 5-10 minutes late, then I'll mark them tardy. But in general, giving them a little bit of grace time to get in. If you do a bell ringer, again, that's a great time to do a bell ringer. And then I talked a little bit earlier about using the daily check-in. So a couple daily check-ins that I like to incorporate. There's a Would You Rather math website, and it gives you kind of like 2 pictures, and it says, would you rather like have a 16 slice round pizza or a 8 sliced square pizza? And it's a good discussion starter if you want to bring some math into it. Or you can go the route of memes. My kids love memes because they're freshmen and they have really terrible senses of humor. So anyways, I use like the meme scale. I found these, just pull them off Google Images and put that up, and I let the online kids will put it in the chat box, like, which rubber duck are you? Oh, well, today I feel like 1 or feel like 2. And then now my in-person kids, they just kind of yell things out, and we talk a little bit about it. It starts them talking too.
So Sarah,
Okay.
I don't know if you mentioned it already, but can you talk to us a little bit about how your physical classroom is set up? So you have people your kids in person, and then you have kids coming in with the Google Meet. And I might have missed it at the beginning there because I was trying to hit all the record and do the stuff. But do you have the Google Meet with the kids that are coming in remote displayed, or does that run on a separate machine and then you kind of attend to them? And audio, like, how does that work? How do you communicate with the kids in the Meet?
So the way my desk is stationed is my desk is like the way that my desk is perpendicular to the door. And my screen is actually not my screen and my webcam are facing like what's behind me, and what's behind me is a giant fume hood. So when the kids come in, they see this, like they see me and the giant fume hood behind me. I have a what kind of it's a webcam that you can twist around, so I can actually take the webcam and turn it around so they can see the rest of the class. But typically it's focused on me for the most part. And if there's kids that want to talk to the kids online, I'll just like flip the camera out and they can talk to them that way. One thing that I will do on occasion is I have a separate, I have a Microsoft Surface, and I will, if I'm trying to make groups with my online kids and my in-person kids, I will have one of my in-person kids log into Zoom. And then I can kind of make a breakout room that way. And that way that person that they are working with can feel included in that group to try to build that community between them. I will say that doesn't work in about 60% of times, because unless the kids know each other already, it's kind of a hard fit. I mean, it's hard to force that collaboration when you're like, here's a random online kid that you've never met in person and you don't know personally. I want you to work with this other kid. Whereas, if you try to do that in person, you can be like, oh yeah, look at these great heterogeneous groups that I have made, and you all are going to work together, and it's a little more natural when you do it in person. So there's that.
Nikki Dean last week told us about, she did the same thing where she sort of have the kids that are coming in remote on a Chromebook, and she says, here, you get to sit with Johnny. And she puts the device down sort of at a table when she does, table work or group work. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what necessarily the best practice of that is. I think we're still just trying to figure out, on a case-by-case basis, whether combining online and in-person collaboration groups is going to work. I took some feedback. I did a big feedback survey at the end of my first semester from my kids, and some of them were like, yeah, I really don't like to be paired with the online kids because the online kids don't talk because they'll shut their screens off and then they won't say anything. Yeah. So it was kind of an interesting, like, okay, well, I'm glad you told me that, but that's happening, even though I try to put you in these breakout rooms and things like that. But it's not ideal, basically.
How do you take attendance? Sarah, how do you take attendance from the kids that are coming in remote?
So we have Infinite Campus. So what I usually do is while my kids are doing that daily check-in, I will go and I'll mark my attendance as they're coming in. So that's the daily check-in is kind of a way for me to be like, I got 2 minutes. Let me get this attendance in. And then if I have kids coming in late remote, I mean, I'll just go back when I have a moment during that class time and mark them.
Got it. So you basically kind of just check them as they come in, and then you obviously check the kids in the classroom. And for those of you at home, Infinite Campus is our equivalent of eSchool or eSchool Plus, just another student information system.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
If we're only there for 7 minutes or 20 minutes out of your 90 minutes, you still count them as there?
No. Our attendance policy is they have to be present for 50% of class in order to be considered present. And I double check that with our attendance folks because I've had kids. Now, I will say the exception to that is if a kid says, hey, I'm having internet issues and I know I'm not going to be able to get my Wi-Fi back up, then there's that exception. There's those technology situations. But if I have a kid who shows up for 5 minutes and then pieces out, like they're absent.
What about if they're technically there, but there's no screen, no volume, they don't respond to questions, and they don't write anything in the chat? Do you count them as present?
Yes, I do. I still count them as present, but I will send them a follow-up message on Schoology, or I'll email a parent afterwards and say, hey, I saw that they were there, their screen was there, their name was there, but they didn't really get the classwork done that we were doing. And I try to cite it that way. I have kids that do that though on a frequent basis where they'll log in and say, okay, I'm present, but then they just walk away. They shut their screen off. I don't know. There's been some circumstances where a kid has had to walk away because they've had to take care of a sibling for a little bit. So I've tried to give more grace in those sort of situations because ultimately at the end of the day, you don't know what's going on at home and you don't know what's happening there. So I'd rather have a conversation afterwards and say, I tried to get a hold of them. This is what we tried. It wasn't working. Can you give me some insight as to what's going on?
I've had kids they don't turn their screen on. They don't turn the volume on. They do not put in the chat. They do not respond when you ask them questions. When you email them, there's no response there. You call home at that same time, hey, what's going on? And they don't even answer the phone. So that's when I'm like marking them absent because you are not there.
Right. Yeah. And it sounds like you've exhausted all your options. And at that point, some of my colleagues have, again, because we're using Zoom, if they're not responding, they'll put them back in the waiting room. And then they'll send them a message and say, when you are present, you need to let me know and I will let you back into class. So I was like, that's an interesting tactic rather than with Zoom, once you kick somebody out, they can't come back in. So at least it pushes them into the waiting room and says, all right, when you're ready, we're here. Come on back whenever.
Yeah.
That's a nice feature.
Yeah, it is.
I think it comes down to, it's going to be a challenge for everyone. And it sounds like, Sarah, you're kind of, there's certainly extenuating circumstances, and we have the same, kind of kids and same kind of families at our district. And it's no different than kind of following up with them if they're not in school physically. So I think it's something we just think about pedagogy and doesn't really, I don't know that the technology stands in the way. I think it's still like they're going to choose to be part of school or not, depending on how they do it. So,
right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, take it away.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll go back. Let me go back to my slides real quick.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of finish those up and then take more questions. Okay. All right. Bell ringers. All right. So again, starting my class, bell ringer, attendance, getting them in. I always go over that agenda. So that agenda that I was talking about. So that's my very first starting point after we do the check-ins is like, here's our agenda for the day. And I do that both at the very beginning and I circle back to it at the end just to make sure the expectations are clear. So even if the kid is, maybe not there in the beginning for the agenda going over, I'm going to go over it again at the end just to reiterate things. Again, I think that consistency and refreshing their brains of, hey, this is what we did today and this is what I expect of you for next time really helps. My freshmen are very disorganized. They admit to being disorganized, and I see it in their work, and I see it whether they're in person or online. So just having that up there and keeping that communication open is really beneficial so they can keep hearing it. If I have other announcements, I'll tell them that at that time. I typically give my kids about 1 or 2 minutes of transition time if we're moving in between tasks, especially the kids online, because a lot of times they don't have their materials right next to them. So they need a couple minutes to move from, say if you are saying grab a notebook, well, their notebook might not be next to them. So I say, okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I'm going to stop talking, get set up, and then I'm going to begin at whatever time it was. So I think building in that little bit of time, the transition time, much like you would do in person, really, really helps with those online kids. The one thing I do a lot of breakout rooms with my kids, especially when they were all fully remote. Obviously now I have just some remote and then the in person. I mean, it's the same as collaborative groups online. So depending on what we're doing, I'll offer breakout rooms. If kids want to get into them, whether it's with friends or whether it's with just me or something of that nature. Here's an example of how I set up my breakout rooms. It's worked pretty well, actually. So say I have a class of 20 kids that are online. Like one of my first classes of the day is I have about 20 kids online. When we get to the point where they're working independently, I give them these choices for breakout rooms. And this is actually, I put this as a slide in my agenda so I can just kind of go back and forth with it. So in the chat box, I say, okay, well, if you choose your Zoom room. If you want to work by yourself, I'll put you in one. If you want to do small group with me where I will sit in the room with you, we can do that. I'll go into 2 with you, and then collaboration with other people. If they have friends that are also online, sometimes they like to go into that room, and then it tends to be a little bit louder and they can socialize. Now, once they get in those rooms, I usually tell them, hey, I'm going to come in about 5 minutes and start bouncing around. But if you need me before then, just hit the call me button. I can't remember what it's exactly called on Zoom. There's a ask question, I think, button. But yeah, I give them some choice in the matter of how they want to work. So that way, again, if they have friends that are online as well, they can work with them and they feel a little bit less isolated.
And Dan, just to point out for sort of our benefits at Streetsboro, Dan and crew has a great video to roll over all of the enterprise features in Google Meet that we have posted and shared out before. But just so you know, breakout rooms is a no big deal in Google Meet. And as a sort of the moderator, the teacher, you can jump from room to room to room to room. It's very, very simple to navigate, very simple to move one kid from one room to the other, kind of come in, visit, come out, pop out, and you can manage. It's very, very simple. Might be something you want to, take a look at and kind of learn before you do it with kids. You could do it with a couple of fellow staff members. And certainly if you want more help, Dan and Courtney, Molly, we're all available to help you with that. Even I would say, right, Dan, I'm looking at Dan, I'm volunteering us here. But, if Mrs. Maruna wanted to have us in for social studies, we sure would love to be part of it and kind of work it and help moderating. Back to Sarah.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, and real quick, Sarah was saying in Zoom, there's like a, ask for help. In Google Meet breakout rooms, there's right at the top of when the students are in a breakout room, it says ask for help. So it's the exact same thing. They can press that and then it signals to you as a teacher, like, Charlie Stitzel needs your help in breakout room 1 or whatever it might be. Or it just says, so it gives you an indication.
Yeah.
But yes, we're happy to help. So we'll see you, Sherry.
Super.
Okay, so some expectations that I usually set, again, for my online kids, and then I also tell my in-person kids that this is what's happening. So online kids, again, I do a lot of project-based work in physical science, and I will start them off on things and give them time to kind of digest and get in there and dig into the material, and then I'll check in for questions and kind of roll that way. So the expectation I set with my online kids is I'm gonna check in on you every 10 to 15 minutes. So whether that is a chat box check-in or whether that's me unmuting and saying, hey, Just want to make sure you're okay. Do you have any questions? And so my kids from the beginning, they know that about every 10 to 15, I'm going to come back and I'm going to make sure that everybody's okay. And they can just respond with, yeah, I'm good. Or, oh, I have a question. Or can we go into a breakout room? More times than not, they're good. I mean, whether they actually are good is another question to be asked depending on the work. But at least it keeps them accountable and knowing that I am still there for them, even though that I am not physically on Zoom for those 90 minutes total. And I'm running around the room with my in-person kids. So, and again, the dual purpose here gives me time to circulate around with my in-person folks. I do laps around my room pretty much all day and answer their questions. And my in-person kids know, hey, you know, Rivera is going to tell us that she is working with the Zoom kids, and they know that during that time, just hold on to questions for a little bit. And sometimes it becomes a little chaotic because sometimes my in-person kids are like, Rivera. And I'm like, okay, I'm on Zoom. I'm answering a question. I'll be with you in 5 minutes. And they're totally fine with that. And that's just kind of how my learning environment works. My online kids also know that they can shoot me a message at any time, or, you know, do the ask for help button at any time while we're doing this. So it's kind of a chaotic rodeo sometimes with different things going on. Especially when there's questions about stuff that's not involved with our class, but we do the best we can. There are times where I do feel guilty that I don't spend enough time with my online kids. I mean, that's a completely valid feeling if you feel like you're ignoring them and maybe not making those relationships so strong as they could be if they were in person. So don't beat yourself up if you feel like that. It's completely normal. It happens all the time. You know, you want to be there for them for the entire period, but you know that you have other kids in the room to do, you know, to help as well.
Sarah, do you ever do office hours or kind of meet one-on-one with a remote kid?
I offer office hours. Like I'll tell a kid like, hey, if you have a study hall during one of my other periods and I have another class going on, I was like, you can totally come in. A lot of them just prefer to shoot me a message on Schoology and say, hey, this is my question. And they prefer to communicate that way with me. I will do one-on-one conferences during the class time. So I'll set aside like 20 minutes of class. Okay, we're having conferences today with my online kids. My other kids are working in the room. I'm still going to circulate after those 20 minutes, but I do set aside one-on-one conference time for sure.
Great. And that seems to work. Or you said most of them just shoot you a message. What about?
Yeah, most of them. Yeah, I would say most of them they're more comfortable either emailing me or sending me a message on Schoology to get their questions answered, or they'll wait till we have the next class and they'll be like, hey, can we go in a breakout room and talk about this for 10 minutes? And I was like, okay, that's fine.
Does your district, you said you talked about the attendance policy, which I thought was interesting. So do you have a guideline from the district that says, hey, because they're remote, here's the expected return, you know, like response time, basically, you know, like, or do you set that yourself as your own standard? Like, I'm going to get back to kids within 24 hours, the same school day, you know, Sunday morning, whatever you might want to do.
That's a good question. I don't know if we have a district policy on it. My personal policy is if they're messaging me after 5 p.m., and I mean, I tell them this too, if you message me after 5 p.m., I'll get back to you the next day, unless it's absolutely an emergency, which it never usually is. And then with parent emails, I do 24 hours because sometimes, especially if you're getting one that might be not as savory as you'd like, sometimes you need a little time to digest, and it's good to take 24 hours and get back to that parent and in a calm, cool, and collected way versus firing off something that has a lot of disgruntled emotion behind it. So
I feel like that's solid advice for any communication is to just wait 1 minute. Yep. Great.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you that at the beginning of my career, I made that mistake of answering them too quickly, and I stressed myself out to the max and just was worried about, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? What are they going to say? And like, I had to put a stop to it. I'm like, I can't be mentally healthy, or at least somewhat mentally healthy, and deal with this if I don't cut myself off from that at a certain point.
Yeah. Talk to us about that a little bit. I know, I know some of your hobbies, but how do you deal with the mental stress and sort of the, you know, juggling 500 balls at the same time? what do you do?
Setting boundaries. I mean, that's my biggest thing is I try my best not to take work home because I know when I get home, it's not going to get graded and it's not going to get done. Obviously, having a 5-year-old, as Mr. Stitzel can attest to, they are tiny terrors and nothing gets done when you get home except for what they need. So yeah, absolutely setting boundaries, setting boundaries with email answering, with doing work, things like that. That I think that really helps because again, as long as you're communicating what those boundaries are, especially with students, they will respect them and they'll know, hey, I emailed her at 10 o'clock and she's not going to respond right away. I don't do any lesson planning on the weekends. Like the weekend is my time to decompress. It is my time to do other things. And I try my best to balance my workflow in that I'm not grading everything. Like, yes, I will give them feedback on it, but I'm not going to grade everything. And I want to make sure that what I'm giving them for practice work is quality, not quantity.
Yeah, I love it. I'm looking ahead in the slides because I'm so excited. I want to learn about your learning journey. I'm ready.
Oh yeah, this manifested a little bit last year, and then this year I was like, we're doing it. That's fine. Let's just dive in. So again, because my classes are very project based, I like to plan out one unit at a time, kind of what things look like. So again, this is a part of the managing workflow situation. So I'm going to pop this open real quick. Let me see if it'll switch over. Hold on, present. Nope, it didn't switch. See, it says switch tab, and it's not switching the tab. Okay, there we go. Now we got it. All right. So this, again, it started spawning in my mind last year, and then I went full force with it this year. And I, again, dual purpose with this. Number one, it's me planning a lesson or planning a unit from start to finish. Secondly, it gives the kids an outline of what to expect as well. And when I had originally seen this was kind of a conglomeration of stuff that I saw at tech conferences in terms of like choice boards and things like that. And this is my kind of pared down version of it. So for every unit this year, I go in and we have, I can't remember what they're called. There's like an outline of achievement where like the kid, it's rated 4, 3, 2, 1, that the original, like one of the people that create the course or have taught the course for a long time say like at a level 4, the student should be able to do this, this, and this. At a level 3, the student should be able to do this, this, and this. So my objectives on my learning journey are based off of those kind of parameters that are built into the course. The person that's teaching the course with me, she's been teaching for 35 years, and I'm pretty sure it's always been physical science. So like she knows what she's doing. So anyway, so I put my objectives up there and then I scaffold it. And one thing that I do differently than other teachers who are doing both online and in person is I give 2 options for these different levels. One of them is digital and usually one of them is a physical, especially with labs and things like that. And some of my in-person kids will do the digital option and that's totally fine, but I also offer that physical option for them as well. So I differentiate based on digital versus physical in some of the different options that I do. But you'll see it kind of goes in sequence. So they'll do some previewing, they'll do some notes, and then kind of go on from there. And then this is how it's labeled also in my Schoology page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, loaded up in there. I publish it as I go, so that way they're not working too far ahead. But it gives the students some choices. It lets me know where they're at. And then it also gives them kind of a final deadline for all the work.
I feel like we should do a whole workshop about that. 1, 2, 3,
I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, that sounds a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I just remember back to when I was, back in the Swedish high school. At the start of every course we took there, we would be given this long document and said like, what do you want your grade to be? And we were 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a whole different grading system. But basically, say if you want to score number 4, like here's what you got to do. And it was like, and then if you want to do a 3, 2, 1, so you basically kind of decided your grade by saying, I'm going to master all of these things. And they were objective based, but it was very clear at the beginning of each course, like if you want this grade, here's what we're expecting you to be able to do. And I like it from the perspective of when we do remote, it's almost like I'm taking 2 courses this semester at Kent State, and it's very similar. Like here, the syllabus, here's what we're going to want you to produce. Here's the level. It's very, I think that's sometimes overwhelming for K-12 to have. I think the syllabus for my one stats course this spring is like, I don't even know, like 18 pages or something. And that's an assignment in itself, just to read the syllabus. But it makes it nice and easy because a kid that's remote can, when you're done, like when you're not with you, right? Like when I'm not in Mrs. Rivera's classroom, I can still break away and kind of read it and have access to it and continue. And this seems very straightforward. Do you ever then have kids kind of, when they're working on the project, do you kind of just check in with them and say, okay, boom, off you go, like do your project work, and then you see them maybe like a half hour, like 40 minutes later, and you have it sounds like you have block, which is different from us, but are you letting them do that? Is that a freedom that you're able to take?
So they would skip the other stuff before, and then and go to the project first?
Yeah,
or is that what you're asking?
on the project time. So like instead of kind of being in class, or do they do both?
I would say they do both. So far what I've noticed is, again, just because of the variable learning environment, I don't have too many kids that work ahead on that planner. Like I'll have 1 or 2 kids that are like, I'm going to go do the assignments and then I'm going to start hitting the project. And that's fine. I mean, it's the same kids every single time, but most of them are pretty sequential in what they're thinking. And the way I have it scaffolded is like, that's all your prior knowledge that you're going to need to do that project. So you really gotta do that stuff first before you hit it. And then along the way, I'm still giving them feedback. I'm letting them revise their work. I'm looking for any discrepancies. If they've got any missing work, they're not going to keep moving until they get that in and it's at an adequate level.
Great. I think those are, I like that whole format. So maybe we'll ask you to come back for a different day.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll talk about
a whole different thing. So, okay. So then you have talked a little bit about the technology that you use. So you talked about managing the work.
Yeah.
And then you have a list of some, oh, here we go. Here comes the shopping.
Here we go.
Dan, get ready.
Here comes the shopping list. So my motto is always use tech that, works for you and don't try to reinvent the wheel, especially right now. And I know there's a lot of really fancy things coming out. They're like, look, you should use this during remote learning and it's going to make your life 10 times better. But everything that I've been using, minus whiteboard.chat, and Schoology, because that's new to me too. Everything else I've been using for a very long time and I've been consistent with using and I'm very proficient at using. So while I'm open to testing out new pieces of tech, I want to make sure that it fits the purpose that I'm trying to relay, and I want to make sure it's still engaging for my students. And I also don't want my students to have 15 different logins to things because they're overwhelmed as it is, and throwing 8 different logins that are non-Google logins and all this other stuff at them is really not going to serve a good purpose for anybody. So a lot of times I'll use Nearpod for notes or for previewing or for some collaborative work. And what's nice about Nearpod or Pear Deck, Pear Deck does the same thing, or similar things, I should say. Not the same, because the Pear Deck people will come after me. Similar things where you've got that student interaction. So if you have those kids online who have their screens off, have their mics off, you don't know if they're there, they may be still participating in that Pear Deck or that Nearpod, and it gives them kind of a safe way to participate without having to take the risk of turning their screen on or turning their mic on.
Right, yeah.
So that's kind of nice. And then whiteboard.chat. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, we have Pear Deck, the premium version at Streetsboro. So I would say that that's a huge, that's a different mode of instruction, but you have kids that are probably not going to be comfortable being on camera, but they can still participate in an activity in Pear Deck. And then of course, everything there is captured. They could work remote, collaboratively in the Pear Deck. Nearpod, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I get the feeling that Nearpod came out and it was kind of tailored for the iPad crowd. And then Pear Deck was sort of a little bit of an answer to that on the Chromebook, but now it's kind of, they're not the same, but it's very similar.
Yeah, they're very similar. I think the partnerships that Nearpod has maybe a little bit more, like they've got partnerships with like Flocabulary and iCivics, and like they've got some big names coming in there. But from what I've seen, they work very similarly. And again, the goal is to have that collaborative element for those kids, and to get them engaged with the material in a different way. So either way works. Even though I am a Nearpod pioneer, and full disclosure, I am pro either one. So my allegiance, I don't want to state my allegiance and throw you off of one or the other.
I feel like you're pro pedagogy.
I am pro pedagogy. Yes.
Right. We just do it different. That's okay. What is can you talk to me or talk to us about that whiteboard.chat? I don't even know anything about that whiteboard.chat. Is that like a jam board? Dan, I'm looking at Dan. Throwing it up.
Yeah. So it is like a Jamboard, and I know, being somebody who's quite googly, I haven't jumped on the Jamboard trend yet, or maybe the Jamboard jam session, perhaps. I know, like I know a little bit about Jamboard. I remember when Jamboard, you had to buy the board in order to use Jamboard, and then it became magically free. That was one thing that I said, okay, I don't know if I necessarily need it yet this year, and I'm not going to dig too far into it because I've got to try to tread water with switching schools, teaching a brand new subject I've never taught before, and remote learning. So I kind of backboarded the jam session. But whiteboard.chat works very similarly. It's completely free. I can't remember where the developer's out of, but they take advice from teachers on what kind of features they want built in. And it's a good solution, an easy solution for teachers who want to add multiple kids to a whiteboard and have them work collaboratively on it, or use it as a presentation medium between in-person kids and remote kids.
Yep. And
Dan, if you have anything
in our chat, Dan did a session today on Jamboard. So very simple, basically like a big whiteboard that you can share like a Google document. So
yeah, and I was going to say too, the second session I did today was on digital whiteboards, and I did talk about whiteboard.chat as well. So that if you want more information, you can watch that video, and I kind of navigate through it a little bit too. So, and I learned from it from Sarah. Sarah's the one that told me about it. So it's a full circle moment here, but yeah, I did mention that today too. So if you do want more information, but yeah, Jamboard, that video is up too, and it's awesome. I love Jamboard. So.
Yeah, I think next year I'm going to look more into Jamboard and kind of convert what I've done this year into Jamboard, because I'm guessing, just knowing how Google stuff is set up, it's probably got some more bells and whistles than the whiteboard.chat, and then I'll probably convert everything over and whatnot. But yeah, it's on my ed tech to-do list after we survive this year.
Here's what I like. So I like that. I think we should take a moment to reflect there, and you've talked about this already, but when I was in the classroom as a teacher too, I worked very much the same way. I said, okay, I'm going to do this, and that for this year, and I'm not going to change it. And you started your talk with the routine. And I found too that if I try to like throw in too many new things, the kids were just like, what are we doing? And so I like that you're saying that as a professional, you're saying, okay, I'm using whiteboard.chat because that works for me now. And then later I'll retool it. I will not retool it second week of January. And I think that's solid advice for any educator, any professional really, because it does take some time to really learn something, to be really proficient in order to then teach with it. And so I think, one of the dangers today, like you said too, there's a whole smorgasbord, we'll throw in a Swedish term, a smorgasbord of options, and a lot of them do the same thing. So if you're already using something, and for those of you watching or in the talk today, if you're already using something, think about that as opposed to sort of like, well, here's this other thing. My sister is always chasing the grass greener on the other side. And I find that I'm just going to mow this lawn for a while, and then I'm going to change over, because otherwise I'm going to lose it myself.
I think too, to that point, is now having to do this learning, the two different types of learning at the same time. You may find brand new uses for the stuff you already use, or use it in a different way that you're like, hey, this is something that I can keep going. If and when we are fully in person next school year, I can incorporate this into my existing practice. So I think that's really powerful to think about that as you go along too. Yeah,
I love it. What's the last one there? What's the PHET, the FET? I don't know how you say that.
Oh, FET. So that's a specifically science one. There's science simulations. Here, let me switch tabs and I'll show you. They're pretty cool. Let's see, FET simulations.
When Sarah creates a black
hole. It's like
hole.
one of the, I know. hold on, this tab switching thing, I am not good at this. It's okay.
It is okay.
I'm going to get it.
Right. Another important
Yes,
lesson.
it's totally
Right?
okay.
There's no
So
need to feel like the struggle. You just do it as long as you keep going.
you just jump in sometimes.
Yeah.
So FET's like the gold standard for science and math stuff. And when Flash went away, you heard this concurrent like groan from all the science teachers who use all these online labs. And then all of a sudden the Flash goes away and then they're all gone. So like every digital lab from what is it, Harcourt, Harcourt, Mifflin, whatever the textbook publishers are, like they're gone because Flash doesn't work anymore. So what's nice about FET is they've got HTML5 and you can go through again specifically science stuff. Let me see if it loads on my end. They've got all sorts of fun simulations, and now they have a whole section about activities. So there's actual teachers that write activities that go with them. And they all work on Chromebooks, which is a beautiful thing. So I use those a lot, depending on what we're teaching. They're pretty good. We were using, I don't know if it's on here, we were using a skateboard one too. Oh yeah, we were doing MG skate park today because we're doing physics right now. So it's kind of fun and kind of interactive. And again, that online lab experience, like that totally helps with it.
Is that something you would assign as a homework, Sarah? Like, or maybe like a pre-work, like a flipping it and say, hey, I need you to go to the FET, load this simulation, or like a link directly to it, work it, and then let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'll throw out a quick Google form with it and do it that way. When I use Actively Learn has now partnered with FET. So they have created questions that go along with those FET simulations. So I can assign something in Actively Learn. The kids will go in, they have the simulation on one side of their screen, they got questions on the other. That's a great way, again, to do a previewing or to shore up concepts. We actually just did one today because we're doing energy transformations and they're heading into project land next class, but just to show them another way that energy is transformed using a skate park. So yeah, it's a great starter, great way to do an online lab, gets everybody involved with it.
Super cool.
Yep. So
thinking about what's his name. Who's the skater that always gets mistaken for other people? I don't know.
It's Tony Hawk. Yeah.
Tony Hawk. So Sarah is super adept at social media. I wonder, have you ever taken the advantage sort of during these times or any other time to kind of like combine social media and like invite Tony Hawk in for the lab? Has that ever crossed your mind?
That's a really great idea. Between him and Mark Rober, I would see who I'd get in first. For those of you that don't know who Mark Rober is, he's this fantastic engineering guy, and I love him, like obsessively love him. He has a whole YouTube channel. He was an engineer at the JPL. He's had some really high-ranking engineering positions, but now he's a YouTuber for the last, 8 or 10 years, and he makes these fantastic creations that show the beauty of engineering things. He does a glitter bomb video for the last 3 years that is just absolutely magical. And the glitter bomb 3.0 is even better engineered, and it's great. I use those in my class too because it's a great, again, if we're doing simple machines, like here you go, here's a glitter bomb video, watch it, tell me what you saw, tell me the simple machines. He's got a great video too on, he made a Squirrel Ninja Warrior course, and that, again, simple machines and all sorts of physics stuff. I'm like, yes, let's use this. But yeah, there's my tangent on Mark Rober. He's great. Anyways, yeah, that'd be pretty cool to get them in. I do use, and again, shameless plug for them, I use Skype a Scientist. And it's not just life science people. There's engineers, there's mathematicians, there's statisticians, sorry. Trying to think who else is in there. There's a whole list. Anyways, Skype a Scientist is completely free. You go on, you put in when your class meets, you select what type of scientist you want, you talk about, your demographic area, and if you want a specific type of scientist, like a first-generation college grad, that sort of thing. And then they will match you with a scientist, and the scientist will Skype or Google Meet or Zoom in and talk to your kids about what they do.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
We had time for questions.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to stop.
I can
stop sharing.
There you go.
Yeah, ask me all the questions.
Jerry, Sandy, Tracy, what questions do you have?
I don't really have any questions. I mean, she pretty much just covered a lot of stuff. I took some notes here. I'm going to try some of the things that you mentioned. So as Dan knows, I need to get a little bit more tech savvy on some of these things, like with the Jamboard and stuff like that. But we're just taking the baby steps this year.
You're doing great.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, you got to give yourself grace like that. At the end of the day, like every day you're doing the best that you can. And the kids are right there with you. You know, everyone is tired, but we're hopeful that we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this until May, and we're gonna make this happen. And it's gonna be a year unlike any other, and we're gonna learn so much from it.
I do find it rather challenging to be online like this, you know, for more than 7 hours and then expecting the children to do the same thing. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, people are like, well, you got to give them a break. What about us? Kind of, we need a break too,
Mm-hmm.
but we're on here.
Right.
I'm on here from 8 o'clock in the morning, and here you see I'm still on. I've been on all day too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. Sherry?
Yeah, I try my best during my lunch periods or my planning to like go take a walk around the building and just get away from that screen, because I was starting to get headaches after a while of being on so long, and I was like, am I not drinking enough water? Am I staring at a screen too long? Things like that. You know, anything that you can do for a little 10 minutes of self-care just to get away from the screen. Because I know we're so sucked in. We're like, okay, well, we've got 20 minutes of lunch. Like, let's grade or let's follow up with parents or whatever. And it's almost like, again, that boundary setting of, okay, I need 10 minutes for myself because I have given all I've gotten to my kids and to parents and things like that. I need to go take a walk around the building, like stuff like that.
That's great advice. Sherry, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So I thought this was a live event and it wasn't going to be recorded. So appreciate you guys recording it, but I thought I'd just hang on anyways because I'm just watching the impeachment. But hey, you guys, Sarah, can you talk to me about testing? Like, I'm so worried about testing because like my in-person kids, like I can lock the Chromebook and I have kids at home that aren't on a school issued Chromebook, or like sometimes they're on their phone and stuff. So I was just thinking, how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure that online kids can cheat. Like my kids cheat all the time online, but when I'm watching the in-person kids, they don't. You know what I mean? They don't have their phones. They aren't cheating. So how have you handled that?
You're probably not going to like my answer, but I don't give tests. I give projects. So because I give projects, I don't have to worry about the whole secure browser thing. But I will say, like, I'm the only one in my entire science department that does projects. Everybody else does tests. And that's always, your worry is across all departments because they still have not found a way to prevent kids from Googling things or cheating things, or kids will be on FaceTime with other kids while they're taking these tests. And, you know, the kids they know how to do it. A couple of things I've read about because I've been trying to think and to help my colleagues, like, listen, I know you have all your tests stored in Blackboard and you need to migrate them to Schoology and you're very attached to them, but I'm almost wondering if for the online kids, at least, fewer questions and maybe longer extended response would be a more appropriate way where they're not just Googling, you know, what is a neutron and then popping an answer in that way. So thinking about how you would change those assessments. Again, it might be for you teaching the online kids, it might be a little bit more grading work, but you have that guarantee that they're probably not going to cheat if they really have to dig into a question. I also am a big fan of scenario-based questions. So here's a scenario, and I want you to explain, based on the scenario I gave you, explain what's going on.
Yeah, I understand that. Yep. I am in a grading nightmare, though, with that kind of stuff. But I did notice timing the tests help. I just don't think it's necessarily fair. But I guess that's just like something I have to get over.
Yeah, honestly, I don't.
You're onto something that, like Sarah said, we're all struggling with. One of the things that I know Dan and I have suggested to a couple of folks is to look at like a flip grid, which would allow them to, again, like record and, you know, kind of record a message. So instead of them writing it down, because that's where some of the plagiarism comes in, is when they kind of can copy paste from a, I don't know, Wikipedia article or whatever, have them actually kind of talk about it. And Flipgrid is one of those tools where you can say, here's the prompt, you know, or like today, I keep thinking about you the whole day, like, here we go with the impeachments. Like, all you got to do is, here, watch this, and we'll talk about it for the rest of the year. You know, like, here's history in the making. But you could have an assignment where it's not like, here's the right answer, but have them watch, you know, get on PBS or wherever I mean, it's all over the internet, right? And then leave a reaction. Like Sarah said, I like the scenario. Like, what is happening here? Like, what have you learned thus far in the course? Apply it to what is happening here. I was on yesterday, and this is just an example, but I clicked on a link and it took me into a hearing by the Supreme Court in Ohio. And they were right on YouTube. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm watching live, you know, like testimony for the Supreme Court. And I didn't understand half of it because it was this and that. And they're like, as in this court, you know, they're just talking. But I thought that's the application part, but that's hard to grade, right? So I get it, because I mean, I taught social studies. I'm like, I don't know. Do you understand history? Do you understand to think like a historian? That's super hard. That's almost subjective grading.
I am adjusting. We're allowing some of the students for like AP classes to come into the building to take their test. And I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
Here's another question for Sarah, though. What about behavioral wise? Like when I'm virtually teaching, like I can ask each individual student a question. I can see them. But if I'm up teaching and my Chromebook is facing me, it's hard to see the online students. And then like, what if I have an issue in the classroom? How have you dealt with that?
Okay. So, so you're saying like I'm online, but then there's like shenanigans going on while I'm online with my Zoomy kids?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So what I will do is, again, because I kind of make my rounds and check in with my Zoom kids, I'll say, hey, I'll be back in 5 minutes, and then go deal with whatever shenanigans are going on. And I'm constantly up and moving around. I'm one of those people who doesn't like to sit down. So online teaching did not work well for me because I was sitting so long. But I will, I'll go address the in-person situation, but then still let my online kids know, hey, I'll be right back. And it's happened even like besides behavioral, like I'll get a call from the guidance department and it's something that has to be addressed right now. So I'll make sure I put a message in the chat to my kids online, say, hey, just keep working, or just why don't you go get a drink of water, go to the bathroom, go do something for the next couple minutes. I'm going to be right back though. So just letting them know what's going on rather than just being like, I'm going to walk away, because then they get concerned.
Right. I guess I'm worried about that positioning, and we don't have webcams. We're just using our Chromebooks, and then I have to mess around with my Chromebook. So I guess I'm worried about that logistically, just the way my classroom is set up. I'm going to practice tomorrow though, which is good, but yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sherry, were you in on the session with Molly that we had a week or so ago, where she showed her classroom setup?
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, we can't all turn our stuff that way, because like at my desktop is what I have on my screen.
Yep.
But I'll work it out. I just think of that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
All right, I want to test something with you. We'll see what happens. I'll come over tomorrow. We'll find Dan and I will swoop in like hawks, and we'll see what happens. I don't know.
That could be cool. I'm kind of scared now, but okay.
I wish we had swoop. I'm jealous that you have swoopy tech people. We have no tech people in our building whatsoever. So
we try hard. Hey, it's 5 o'clock. We really appreciate. Any other questions for Sarah before we thank her and let her go?
Nope. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, no problem.
And if you have more, I will say, so here's a couple plugs. So Sarah, what on Twitter, which one's the right one to get you?
It's the Sarah Rivera STEM one.
That's right. Okay. And then Sarah also teaches courses up at Lake Erie. So if you didn't get your latest Lake Erie professional development catalog, Sarah's in there multiple times. So if you want more Sarah, you can get her at Lake Erie. And then we also try to feature Sarah at other events. And clearly we're going to work on a different workshop, but easy to get a hold of, probably willing to share things via email and so on and so forth.
100%.
Right?
Take all my stuff. I don't even, whatever.
There we go. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for everyone for coming. We'll feature this, so tell all your colleagues that we'll have this video ready for you shortly up on our website for staff. And Sarah, you're more than welcome to take those videos that we have. I'll send you the link and share it with whomever you want. So.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, thanks so much for having me. Hopefully I'll see you all soon again. Do the best you can with this. You realize it's not going to be perfect, and we're always reinventing for the next 4 months that we have for teaching this way. So
there you go.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good day. All right. Bye.
Yeah.